Okay, so I don't know why whenever I start doing my mise en place, one of the dogs feels like they need to work their way into the shot. That's okay. There's the girl. She's asleep in the corner. So this is the mise en place for the no-bake peanut butter cocoa cookies. It's a little simpler than the chewy sugar cookies, but if you don't have access to a stove, this is a perfectly acceptable experiment to try. All we have is peanut butter, some sugar, some vanilla, some butter, some oats. It calls for rolled oats. Rolled oats are basically what we know of as oats, as opposed to steel cut oats, which are more like rice. And some cocoa powder and a little pinch of salt. So I have here our 2 cups of sugar, half cup of milk, stick of unsalted butter, and 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. And what I'm going to do is just turn on the heat, slowly start to melt that butter down. I'm going to get the sugar to dissolve into the butter and the milk, get the cocoa powder to dissolve. We want this to come to a boil so that everything sort of cooks. It's kind of hard to do holding a camera while trying to stir. That's okay, I'll make it work for y'all. Just gonna keep stirring. I'll keep stirring for a minute or 2 until it comes to a boil, and then I will show you what it should look like. So once the butter has melted and everything comes to a boil, see how it's starting to boil along the sides? I'm going to stop stirring. I'm going to set my timer for 1 minute. I'm going to let it boil like this for exactly a minute. That's going to get the sugar to cook down, the butter to completely melt, everything to sort of cook together, since we're not going to be actually cooking this in the oven. But it should take a full minute of boiling. Which is real exciting, watching stuff boil. But that right there is what we call a nice boil. We have 25 seconds left. I'll stir it a little just to check. And then from here it's going to be really super simple. Make sure it's not cooking up on the side there. What we're really doing is just cooking the sugar. We'll do this if we get to creme caramel or flan, or maybe before Christmas we can do some cooked sugar candies or something. There we go. Timer's off. Turn the heat off. We're done with that portion. And once the sugar has reached that temperature, we're going to stir in our oatmeal. We're going to add our peanut butter. It should come off. Please come off with one hand. There we go. Thank you. We're going to add in a little pinch of salt. And we're going to add in our vanilla. And we're going to stir this all up. So the cooking has happened in the heat of the stove rather than in the oven. This is going to have the flavors of chocolate. That smells really good. It's going to have the flavors of chocolate from the cocoa and peanut butter from the peanuts, a little hint of vanilla from the vanilla. And as we mentioned in the class on fat and acid and salt, that little pinch of salt is going to heighten everything. And there we go. It kind of looks like oatmeal, but the oatmeal is absorbing the liquid. Scrape everything off there. Then I'm going to let this sit for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes or so, just so it kind of cools off and starts to harden so it's easier to work with. This should be really fun trying one-handed, but I've let the oatmeal, cocoa, peanut butter, milk, sugar contraption sort of cool off a little bit. I'm going to just use a spoon. I'm going to dig up a little piece and drop it on my tin foil. You don't need to really spray pan. These things will, once they're cold, they'll remove really easily. But this is how you make a nice no-bake cookie. If you have no access to an oven, or maybe you have access to an oven, but it's 100 degrees out, you don't want to turn your oven on, it's perfectly fine to do as well. Because the oatmeal, as I mentioned, is absorbing the liquid from the milk and from the melted sugar and from the peanut butter. Also really great that this is, if you're gluten-free, there's no flour or anything in there. So there, we've got 9 nice little cookies. I'm gonna pop this into the fridge, let it sit for about half an hour, and we'll show you how they look like when they come out. So after about 20 minutes, here she comes. Hey, pretty lady. Oops. Who's my pretty girl? So after about 20 minutes in the refrigerator, our butter and oatmeal and chocolate and sugar is kind of solidified into a nice little, here comes the boy. Nobody's getting chocolate except for me. Into a nice no-bake cookie. It's a great recipe to learn if you need something that's gluten-free, if you need something where you don't have access to an oven, but you can actually cook the stuff on the stove, or I don't know, when you're camping over an open fire. Super, super easy recipe. Really, really delicious oatmeal, chocolate, peanut butter flavors. And hope you had fun. We'll count that. There we go, as a win. My limping old lady.